All right, back at this thing. Black American Sovereignty Podcast, episode 2. Got both hosts in the building today. It's going down, like they say out in H-Town. So, for anybody that hasn't heard the podcast yet, just as a reminder, this is the Black American Sovereignty Podcast. What is Black American sovereignty? It is the realization of Black Americans as a sovereign nation governing the lands of restitution within the borders of the United States of America. That's what we about. That's the message that we pushing. We want to make it about the message. And I'm just really excited to get this going, get some ears on this thing, some agreements, some disagreements, so we could talk it out. But most importantly, get this ball rolling in the right direction, because I think it's the future of America, specifically Black Americans. So got the other host in the building.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Those are the founding words of this great nation, words that this great nation itself betrayed. The laws would not make those betrayals a crime, but if the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are founding documents that are trump cards to this country, then they broke their own fundamental laws by betraying those words. Not just in the enslaving of millions, but in the hundreds and hundreds of examples of persecution, rape, and the ignoring of other citizens that had a mindset cultivated by those behaviors onto Black Americans countless times. So a crime was committed. I think it's fair to say. And when crimes are committed, restitution must be paid. And we have seen no restitution, not reparations, not a check, not a handout. We've tried that. Restitution in what I'm talking about is what General Sherman spoke about, which was 40 acres and a mule. What is that? 40 acres and a mule is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for success, or it's an opportunity for failure. And the only thing that could determine what that 40 acres and mule would do is the individual who possessed it. And so an individual given 40 acres and a mule could build a little cabin, and they could go into that cabin, and then they could drink some bourbon and smoke their peace pipe, and they could have fun all summer long. And when the winter rolled in, they would starve and die. But they got their 40 acres and a mule. Or that person could harvest that land and do all of the agricultural things that it takes to make that land profitable. And they could sell that harvest, and they could eat fat in that winter and repeat that process and become a wealthy business owner. And they got the same 40 acres and a mule as the next man. Well, we never got that 40 acres and a mule. We got put in the corners of the biggest cities in this country and left there to eat and destroy amongst ourselves, to cultivate countercultures, to try to profit any way that we could, which usually meant tearing down our brother by selling him dope or pimping out his daughter or whatever it is we had to do to make a buck in this world, because the white man wouldn't help us out with an opportunity to work like the rest of everybody else. We didn't get to homestead. You know, I want to ask a question, and I want everyone to think about this question. It's a thought experiment. If you close your eyes for just a moment and say to yourself, what would the United States of America look like in 2019 if John Wilkes Booth didn't shoot Abraham Lincoln in the Ford Theater? What would this country look like today? No one knows for sure. But when we look at the power structure in corporate America and say that you have individuals like Jerry Jones is a great example. Jerry Jones made his millions in the oil fields in Texas. And so did, the Rockefellers made a lot of money in Texas, and Exxon Oil and all these different oil companies. The development of crude was a crucial point of gaining extreme amounts of wealth in this nation. And I'm pretty sure we weren't allowed to participate in that. How do we know if John Wilkes Booth doesn't shoot Abraham Lincoln in the back of the head that a black man doesn't discover one of those oil fields and do that hard work? I mean, we know he was bred to work. We know he had the energy for it because he definitely had the energy to till them fields and give you this cotton for free. I think he had the courage and the bravery to go down in that oil well and bring up that crude. And maybe he owns Exxon Oil. Go ahead.
I think you're bringing up some great points. One, that main question of what might the United States look like if Lincoln was not assassinated. Just to be clear, there was these thoughts, the thoughts about what should happen to enslaved Africans after slavery ended was a big conversation. There was things like a colonization committee. There was thoughts of, well, maybe we should, basically send them overseas for their own colony. There was the talk of, the 40 acres and a mule idea was about giving Black Americans their own land within the United States. Regardless, nothing was acted upon. So therefore, you had 4 to 5 million free, newly free people that were basically unwanted everywhere that they went. So I think this is speaking to the lack of opportunities, the lack of the tools to take care of ourselves. I just feel like this is what you're speaking to. And there was thoughts about this during the Civil War and as the Civil War was ending. Needless to say, the plan that was executed, which was basically nothing, you're free, now go figure it out in a world where everyone basically hates you, was what took place, which is why we're at where we're at right now, which is systematically Black Americans are second-class citizens in the United States. That's where we're at.
Andrew Johnson was the 17th president of the United States, serving from 1865 to 1869. Johnson assumed the presidency as he was vice president of the United States at the time of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, a Democrat who ran on the National Union ticket. Johnson came to office as the Civil War concluded. He favored quick restoration of the seceded states to the Union. Let's pause that. So we had a group of states secede from the United States and go to war, and they lost. And his plan was to help them recover as quick as they can. You ever been in a fight and as soon as you beat somebody up, the first thing you want to do is pick them up and take them to the hospital and make sure that they got something to eat tomorrow and that their family's going to be okay just after you whip their butt? His plan did not give protection to the former slaves. So the victors of the war, and we fought in it, and if it wasn't about us, we were definitely a major implicator in the war. One side loses, and his plan is, well, let's help the losers get on their feet as quickly as possible. And the niggers that won, strap up your bootstraps and have a good luck.
Or come back and work, The indentured servitudes, the people had to go back and were basically slaves again in many instances.
He came into conflict with the Republican-dominated Congress, the party of the assassinated president. So you had an assassinated president who also, coincidentally, his party led the Congress at that time. It's safe to say that the power of Lincoln's words, whatever he would have decided, probably would have gotten instituted into law. I think that's a safe assumption. I mean, if you have President Barack Obama and a Democrat Congress and a Democrat Senate, it's safe to say he's probably going to pass some bills that he wants. It's not going to be as hard to do if you're President Obama and you have a bunch of Republicans in the House and Senate. That's going to make it more difficult. So you had an assassinated president who was the leader of the party that controlled the House of Representatives and the Senate. He gets shot in the back of the head, and the guy who's behind him is a Democrat who was on the side of the losers and did not protect the winners. And that's exactly what happened subsequently to John Wilkes Booth, sidetracking this country. And the one group of people who paid the biggest price for that single shot
benefited the least.
The one group of people who felt the effects of that single shot more than any other is, who do you think? Us.
Black Americans. So
just a little history and a little thought experiment. When next time you hear them talk about white privilege and you hear them talk about all the white CEOs and all the this and all the that, well, that's kind of how we got there. You know, if you have, that's kind of how we got there. Okay. Because at that time, there was a whole lot of options on the table that got sidetracked by a murderer, an assassinator of what most Americans on both the right and the left agreed to be the best president ever. And he shot him in the back of the head. And the next guy that came back was basically on the side of the losers of the war. And there's a lot more that we can talk about with Andrew Johnson, but we're not going to get into that now.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears, but
Yes.
Look up Andrew Johnson. Read about Andrew Johnson. Read about the things that came to pass during the Johnson administration. You'll be very shocked to learn that most of the things that we refer to as Jim Crow were founded under the Johnson administration. I'm done with President Johnson.
Okay. So, 2019. Okay. Yes, this is, 200 plus years after the things we're describing. What can we do today? We feel like Black American sovereignty is that thing. Okay. Now, I love to look at similar situations where different cultures have received restitution. In the last episode, I brought up Japanese internment, the wrongful internment of Japanese Americans after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. FDR, okay, considered one of the greatest presidents of all time, signed an order to lock up over 100,000 Japanese Americans over the West Coast. This took place, for three something years, 2 something years and some change. Okay. After the 1940s, World War II ends. Around the late 60s, early 70s, Japanese Americans start a movement to get their restitution for their wrongful internment. Okay. So in the 70s, they start this grassroots movement. In the year 1980, it makes its way up to Congress, led by some Japanese congressmen, American congressmen of Japanese descent, led a committee looking into the effects of the Japanese internment. Has there ever been a committee to look into anything for the wrongful treatment of African Americans? The list of wrongful treatment of African Americans is quite long. However, this committee looked into the wrongful internment, and what they decided. This is what the committee decided. The congressional committee decided that the Japanese internment was a grave injustice motivated by racial prejudice, war hysteria, and the failure of political leadership, which this investigation took 8 years. Okay, and they decided to reward the descendants of those interned $20,000. So around 100,000 Japanese citizens, starting in the year 1990s when the first check went out. President Bush wrote a formal apology. Excuse me. Gave a handwritten letter with a $20,000 check and a formal apology to one of the still alive Japanese citizens that were interned. Now, where's the committee to look into the effects of? I'm gonna keep it more recent. Slavery. Let's just take that off the table. Okay, let's just say it's too long to look into that. How about a congressional committee to look into the effects of redlining? How about that?
Denial of homesteading opportunities.
Yes.
Denial of participation in many different industries.
Let's look into the effects of employment discrimination. Okay. Education discrimination. How about criminal justice discrimination? You're going to tell me their findings won't be a grave injustice motivated by racial prejudice? I'm going to take out war hysteria, make it crime hysteria. We got to lock somebody up, got to blame them for the problems. okay, and a failure of political leadership, you're going to tell me the same results can't come from any investigation looked into the policies of the government for the treatment of black people? I think we need to, I say this motivationally, and this is why I think BAS should be the focus. This is why I think BAS should be the focus, because I think we give our attention to things that are not sustainable for us in the long term. Do I think we need criminal justice reform? Yes, I do. What do I think that reform is? We need to police ourselves. Do I think we need educational reform? Yes, I do. What's the solution? We need the opportunity to educate ourselves.
I want to touch on some different things. And this is the beauty of my friend and myself, is that we see this vision, we see this binding opportunity, this opportunity that is binding us together, but we see it from different angles. And the funny part about it is, and I have to just say this a little bit, is that a lot of what I'm talking about, I used to argue with my friend about being irrelevant. I literally used to sit here with my friend and argue with him about all the things that I want to talk about right now being irrelevant to our community. And I believe so passionately now that it's very not irrelevant. And what I want to talk about is two words: culture and family. Okay? Because culture and family is why I do want to continue to talk about the beginning. And I want to just paint a small analogy. If you're building a home, and the foundation is flawed, there's a major flaw in the structure at the foundational level. You can put whatever gold and ivory and beautiful electronics and filled with, you could have an Apple iMac that's in your refrigerator and some brand new stuff that you ain't never seen before. And you can build it as higher as you're gonna go, but the house is gonna fall. And none of that gold and ivory is going to keep it standing up because the foundation is flawed. And the foundation is flawed inside of our community, in my opinion, primarily for the lack of two positive things: culture and family. And some of that we have to take responsibility for, but the inception of how we got off track, we do not have to take responsibility for. We were shown a path, and every time we leaped off that path, we were hurdled and corralled down that path of destruction further and further by both the United States of Americans within that country, and then the ignoring of the government and these forces that should be correcting these citizens from making these alterations to our path. They ignored it. So if the government wasn't doing it actively, they turned a blind eye to the people who were. And continually, we got off track with family and culture. We talk about Martin Luther King. We talk about Malcolm X. They preached this. We need to stop doing these things. We need to stop doing these things. If you're wearing a Malcolm X hat and you're getting belligerently drunk every night and having indiscriminate sex with a bunch of people, you're not listening to Malcolm X. Our culture that we have developed, we've got to take some responsibility for that. And we need to change it if we're going to see success. The problem is, how can we got three somewhat average, lower than average, just below average, some a little above average, successful black men in this room? How do we reach the young man in East St. Louis? How do we convince him with no tools? How do I reach him? We need to change our culture a little bit.
So I figured.
And we need to emphasize the strength of family a lot. And we need to do that in an environment that we control, that we are the gate holders and the key holders, and we're not knocking on the door.
You were saying?
No, we're not knocking on the door. I'd like to apply to purchase this home. I'd like to apply to rent that space to open up my bakery. And the white man says, I like you. I like your qualifications, but we found somebody else that's got just a little bit more dollars than you and a little bit more clout than you. And so keep on going down the road and good luck, nigger. We hope you make it. No, I want to be the one that says, you know what, young man, what do you got? Okay, this is what you got. We'll work with you. We'll work with you. And if you get off track, we'll replace you. Okay, and we're going to figure this thing out one way or another, but we're going to have winners in this building. And you get an opportunity just like everybody else. I'm tired of being the one knocking on the door. I'm tired of being the one on the outside looking in, trying to get, all the movements. It's always about, can you do this or can you stop doing this? Can you do this for us or can you stop doing this? Okay, I don't want to have to ask you, can I sit somewhere on a bus? I don't want to have to ask you, can I eat in a certain place? Or can I love a certain person? Or can I, walk a certain way or wear my hat a certain way or smoke a tree that I want to smoke? I don't want to have to ask for that permission. You don't get to tell me that, as I don't get to tell you that.
And our contribution to this country, our Americanism has earned us that. It's earned us that. Our patriotism has earned us that. And in all systems, we are on the outside looking in, even in the systems that we dominate, which unfortunately is athletics and, different forms of entertainment. That's where we're dominant at. And we're still on the outside looking in. We have to ask in all situations. And what I want is somebody to comment. I want somebody to tell me different. I want somebody to tell me where we don't have to ask permission.
I want to say this, yes, because we're getting to the point where it's, listen, we're going to do this a lot more. And there might be one person in a room in a basement somewhere in Nova Scotia that listens to it, and I don't give a darn. But I'm going to do it, and we're going to continue to do it. And there's so much more to be discussed. We have thought. We know what it looks like. We know how it gets built. We know where the funds come from.
Separate episode.
These are all things we know. But these are all things that we've thought out. We're not talking about it now because we don't have forever. We've been thinking about this for a long time. And we're trying to do this in short increments. So it's there. So if you like what you heard, if you don't like what you heard, matter of fact, if you don't like what you heard, please say something. Because I've already heard your comments. And now I want everybody else to hear your comments so I can rebut them. Okay? Well, where are you going to do it? And how are you going to get it? And what makes you so... Please comment if you don't like what you heard. I'm waiting for you. Just, you know what I'm saying? And I know, I don't do social media. I don't personally, in my personal life, I don't do it. But for this, I'm doing it. So for the cats that are out there, you're just a nigger and you should just die and you're stupid and you're dumb. I'm ready for that too, man. You know what I mean? I know you're out there. So go ahead and say whatever it is that you're going to say. The people that have something intelligent to say, the people that care about this great nation, the people that care about their communities and their families and their cultures, you're really the ones that I want to hear from.
You heard it here first. This is the Black American Sovereignty Podcast. We're going to keep being with y'all. Stay on the lookout. You'll be able to follow us on all things. We already got the Instagram at Black American Sovereignty. Already got the Twitter at Black American Sovereignty. So we'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.